hear me a lot better without me having to scream. That's lovely. My name is Nia, and I'm talking about that wonderful, wonderful thing we all have, tech debt. So, a little about me. I'm Canadian, but I know the AV guy, we lived here together. So we lived in Atlanta, and then we moved back to Toronto. But the best part about that was, when I first started my career in tech, I got to work with a lot of startups down here in Atlanta. I got to start out with the greenfield projects, and then migrated into those mature startups where they're no longer greenfield, and they have to deal with the pains of legacy. And I learned a lot just from dealing with other people's code. And in this talk, I don't think I'm going to give you guys a lot of new information, but more codify some of the information that's already floating in your head on how to deal with tech debt. Currently, I actually work with a company based out of New York. They help doctors and nurses do their work better by helping them manage their clients and the admin stuff. So anytime you go to your doctor's office or have a telehealth appointment, we're probably the ones playing underneath, making sure all the charting equipment is working correctly. So if something does go wrong, it's not my problem. I did not work on that feature. And yes, we are hiring. So if you guys are looking for jobs, come hound me later. We can chat. Now, one of the best parts about working with Healthy is how they handle tech debt. It really enlightened me, I'd say, or like changed my perspective on the word tech debt. So now let's go back to talking about this instead of talking about Healthy. And I'm sure as soon as you thought about tech debt, this is how you're all feeling, that whole body cringe of like, oh, please stop, no more. But I promise you, it's something we all deal with. You're not isolated in that feeling of ugh. And for me, at least, this article that I've put up here in my slides was amazing because all of the different ideas I had was pretty much distilled in this one great article. So out of this whole talk, if you ignore me yammering about stuff, this one slide I say is very important. The best thing they did was they kind of helped me figure out the types of tech debt and my assumptions on it, and kind of gave me some strategies. So this talk, we're talking about our assumptions that tech debt is not bad. Two, we'll kind of define the different categories of tech debt. Because, hey, if you can put these things into boxes, they're less scary. And three, the strategies for tech debt. I cringe to say that because I think it's more opinion rather than strategy. But I'm sure you all have your own opinions on it, and I'm not going to dissuade you from that. Now, some common assumptions. Tech debt is bad. Tech debt is complicated. Tech debt is not product work. And developer pain is the same as organizational pain. As in, you as a developer who is asked to do this thing is screaming at your computer going, this sucks, I can't do this. It's going to take me 4 times the time because of all the crap code somebody previously has written. Hence, my bosses should give me more. And the whole company should adjust for that. We'll talk about that. Of course, this is obviously something you all already know. We've all already experienced it. But let's reframe this a little bit. Tech debt is not bad. Not revolutionary, yes, but it is the mark of progress. The fact that you have tech debt, dude, congratulations, you succeeded. You survived as a company, managed to find a product fit where people are willing to pay you for your services. So now you're lucky enough to have tech debt. It's just really a change of perspective. And you can break that bad reputation tech debt has by like appreciating how much you've gotten, how far you've gotten with your company, or how far your company has achieved their goals and have been producing a product that people are still willing to pay. And not all tech debt, you don't need to ever get to a point where you have zero tech debt. In fact, the goal here is like the goal of happiness. Happiness is not a goal, it's the journey. Tech debt, getting to zero, is not your goal. It's the journey of just managing it, making it so that you look at it with some joy. And of course, not all tech debt is equal. This is where that categorization really comes into handy. At least for me mentally, having to deal with trying to explain that to product people why this matters, breaking those into smaller manageable tasks, or even like explaining how this is really one type of tech debt versus another really helped. So before we move on to the next slide, I think you should all feel some joy and congratulate yourselves for surviving long enough to have tech debt. So let's just applaud ourselves for a bit. Woo! We've all done this. Amazing. Now, tech debt is not all complicated. I'm sure when you all approach some problem that is tech debt, in the bucket of tech debt, you think of this, that long jQuery string where you touch one thing and you break 7 other things, right? One of the great ways of getting around it is to start looking at those things as something that is defined versus undefined, right? Is this a task, or is this a piece of tech debt that has a start versus an end, and an end, versus it has a start, like is it undefined, where it has a start, but you're not really sure when it's going to end because it's super big, right? Example of the defined, for my company with Healthy, we started using Storybook for front-end documentation. Really started helping work. So when I first started that job, they had no front-end documentation. We had a gazillion, I think I over had 200 tickets for each component to just try to build that documentation, right? So when I initially started, that was an undefined task. When am I going to finish writing all the docs? No idea. But we're now in this wonderful place where if a feature-working developer ships a feature and they have a component that they have not written documentation, they can define that task with a start and an end very quickly, because writing that little piece of documentation is no longer a problem point. For undefined, some of the other examples of what like an undefined task looks like, or an undefined tech debt work looks like, is major library updates. How many of you are on React 18 right now? Because that child prop with TypeScript has made my life miserable. Now, tech debt work is product work. This is probably something a lot of you struggle with communicating with your project leads or the business side of the company. And it's one of the things that I've always had that wall with as well, where it's just like you're trying to convince them that working on this piece of tech debt is really important because eventually it'll help the product. How do you do that, right? Tie it to the metrics. Tie it to product management lingo. Break it down into OKRs. That's what, I still don't know what OKR stands for. I just know that's the product lingo that they use, and I use it myself to explain what I'm trying to do. But yeah, empathy here is the key. It's that part of like understanding where they're coming from. Because at the end of this whole thing, they are also trying to build a good product and build something that's useful for customers and be successful. They're not your enemies here. It's not a tech versus business fight. You're all in the same fucking boat. If you sink, you all sink together. So it's very much trying to understand, how are they thinking? What are they thinking about? Why are they pushing for this so importantly? And how can you communicate or make them feel that pain in the same way? How can you phrase your words, use their fancy business jargons like OKRs and KPIs and some other things I have a little notepad for that I copy paste sometimes, into it, letting them understand what I'm trying to explain, why this tech debt is product work, how it helps the product. And getting their support is instrumental in getting any progress on the concept of tech debt. One of the things that's really helped me was explaining it to them in the terms of money. Money is the equalizer in this. Tech debt is like business credit. Your company takes financial debt from the bank. At some point, they got to pay you back. Same concept. You're doing tech debt by building your own custom product. You're taking on some tech debt. At some point, you have to pay the minimum balance back. And they've got to figure that out because eventually it'll accumulate and you're going to go bankrupt. So finding that balance, right? Yeah, that kind of jargon really helps. Money always helps there. Now this one, developer pain is not organizational pain. As a developer myself, this was hard to accept because there I am staring at jQuery going, why God, why? And how can I tell them, please let me fix this, but it'll take me 3 years and have them accept that? It's not going to be really feasible. To some extent, you're just going to have to accept it that your work, that part of the tech debt part, is going to be hard, and you're just going to have to accept that it's going to suck. And empathy, again, comes in handy here. Because when you're trying to figure out if that tech debt is just developer pain or does it affect the whole company, these are some great questions to ask. Is that thing just affecting you? Is that piece of tech debt affecting users and business? And can you clearly define that? Show them how it's affecting the users and business. For my case with jQuery, I could show them the jitters, where as they click something, something would take forever to load. Where they ask for a new feature, how it was really hard to add that. Do other teams in different parts of the company feel the pain? For me, the biggest part, so the jQuery, FYI, was not healthy. Just a disclaimer, they're beautiful. Do other teams in different fields feel the same? So in that place where I was with jQuery, the customer support people felt the pain because they got yelled at a lot. So it was really helpful to bring them into that conversation, try to figure out, well, which part of this jQuery mess was the most painful, right? And then trying to only make that one piece a React widget or something. So attacking it that way was really helpful. Is there a reason why things are the way they are? A lot of startups, or if you're in that startup community, I mean, screw that, even enterprises. You hire developers from all stages. If you're a startup for you and you're trying to get your idea out, you're not really thinking about what's going to happen 7 years from now. You're just trying to survive now. That means you're writing whatever the fuck you can write, getting it at whatever cost you can manage to pay, so somebody will start paying you for it. And then you can worry about sustainability and scalability and all this other fun stuff, right? For enterprises, there's so many different key elements that they have to worry about. The teams are so spread out that the legacy is just too huge. It's just so broad. How can you attack all of that, right? And one team may have done something a way they've done it for a certain purpose, right? For example, with Healthy, they set up TypeScript with Apollo client in a way that I find very difficult to work with. But they did it because in the era of time where they set that up, those toolings didn't exist. This was their way of getting around it so they could be as efficient as possible. And it taught me a lot because I learned, hey, I'm not always right here. And the other key, and I think this is something we all forget, is does your leadership understand the value of fixing this? And will they support you? As much as all the other points is valid, and as much as you want to go fix this thing because you know it will help the business, and other teams feel that you should fix this and they support you, If your leadership does not support you on this, it's a dead and null case. So you're either going to have to accept you're living with this, this is your reality now, or hey, you're developers, the job market's really nice. So as I've finished preaching at you about all your assumptions and how you have to break all of them, let's actually talk about something practical that actually helped me kind of do that communication part a little better. Types of tech debt. These are the 6 main types, and we'll go through each of them. Maintenance, developer efficiency, stability, security, technical product, and decisions. The best part is I kind of always knew of them, I just never had them verbalized, right? And that article that I mentioned earlier, they do an amazing job of verbalizing it. And this is the categories I got off them. I read that, and it instantly changed how I thought about front-end architecture. And front-end is a place where you're going to have all of these very quickly because JavaScript changes its mind within the month. So keeping up is hard. So maintenance step, what does that mean? Not keeping up to date. That is the #1 problem with all JavaScript applications. Your libraries are going to go out of date very, very quickly. So trying to make sure everything is on the correct version is very, very hard. Cleaning up dead code, pieces of the app or product that you're no longer using, that falls into the maintenance part. And updating documentation. I can't emphasize how much documentation helps in this process because we are a very mature startup. Healthy is a very mature startup. We're still building a lot, and we still have that same startup culture of deploying every day. Documentation, we all work async, we're all remote. So documentation is the only way, having written pieces stating what is where is really the only codified way for us to all share the knowledge across the globe, because we're a team spread across the globe, right? And the best part of that is there is no he said, she said. You go look at the past history and you know exactly who said what. Developer efficiency debt. So this is now engineering workflows that are bogged down, not having tests or alerts for issues. I'm sure you've all had this, and I don't think any one company does this great. I think we all have pieces of it that works really well and pieces we want to improve. And for us, at least, it was making sure we had a lot more feature tests and more confidence in them, right? This allowed our developers to do more experiments to verify if a new pattern or a new system we were thinking was a good way of approaching it. Does that have its cons? Yes, the experimentation problems. But it was much more acceptable for us as a team to accept that con versus going, full throttle into something and then later finding out that wasn't the way to do it. That made us efficient. That may necessarily not make you as efficient for your team structure. So you got to find out how your team works best there and then fine-tuning that efficiency, right? The next one is stability. New features or working on certain areas that affect the stability of that whole product. I'm sure you all have those places that is the creepy, scary, terrible place that gives you nightmares about before you press that save button in your code. Before the merge goes out, you are having a little mental panic attack of whether this should go forward or not. That's the areas. If a part of your feature, if a part of your product scares the crap out of you, hey, that's a stability debt. You need to figure out how can you fix that to make it less scary. And this is also a good place to identify if you're spending a lot of bug reports in that one area. Technical product debt. This is the stuff that usually the product people will get on your ass about because somebody is complaining. This is the stuff that is immediate and visible to users right now. So performance issues where user presses a button and it takes forever to load. I mean, it could be more than 3 milliseconds. It could be 2 seconds. But time is relative when you're on a product and you expect it to work immediately, right? Potential issues caused by other types of tech debt. So this one's a little hazy in the sense that performance issues, for example, are not just one thing. It's not like a one fix, right? It's caused by a little bit of every other type of tech debt causing it. So categorizing this and breaking tickets down for this one was really hard because identifying exactly what type of tech debt causes this is a little bit of experimentation. This has to be very much communicated with the product side on performance. It's not that simple to fix. But other bug fixes or other quick fixes where, for example, we at some place had a user report saying every time I press the green button, it refreshed the form. And then what we realized was they weren't actually pressing the green button that said submit. They were pressing the call to action on the header that led them to the form again. So we had to change the color. So something simple like that, right? So it could be a variety of those. And then decision debt. I think this is something we all immediately think of when we talk about tech debt. This is what we think about. What are the past technical decisions? What are the dev before you do? You know that thing where you look at that code, I'm like, oh, he's a fucking asshole, or she's a freaking idiot. How could they do this to us, you know? That's this. Hey, I was a horrible person about that. I admit I had some really strong anger issues around that, especially when I had to look at high order components. It's like, who in the world? But then I had to remind myself, the stuff that I do now, someone else is going to look at it and going, oh, that bitch. You know, there's no good code, there's no bad code. We all make decisions based on trade-offs of what we have at the time. And you've got to understand, again, you're all in the same boat. You're all trying to do the best you can and provide the best service you can and write the best code you can with the time and the resources and whatever else debt you have at that moment, right? And that does have trade-offs. For us, at least with Healthy right now, we have high order components sprinkled about. When they first set this up, it was very painful, but it really helped us move really fast in making sure our APIs were right, in making sure our components were widgetized and users could use them in a better way. And now we're in the age of hooks, so we're trying to transition, and that's our sticking point, right? For others, it might be something as REST APIs versus GraphQL. GraphQL is the hottest new thing. You should all be on GraphQL, right? Maybe not. I mean, I love GraphQL. I love the fact that I don't have to go bug a backend developer about, what does this thing do? I get to go see exactly what inputs it take and all that fun stuff, right? But for a large enterprise company that has built its whole product on REST, shifting over to GraphQL is not that easy. And you got to understand, they built it in REST not because they chose to. In that time and era, that's all they had, right? So some of that is just understanding the context of when something was built, understanding why they built it that way, and giving them the kindness that they were also trying to be good about it. Again, all of this is perspective, right? How you look at your day and work. So now we go into the next category, which is strategies. Sorry, not category, section of the talk. Strategies, which I would say is really my opinion, mostly because I've implemented this for myself. I don't know if a lot of other people have done it. I haven't done a scientific report, so I can't sit there and claim that this is fact and you should all do this right now. No. This has worked for me. Really, really helped me out. Try it out for yourself. It may help you out based on your team, how you guys communicate, what your expectations are. But again, that other article I mentioned, the one that I keep pointing at is really, really important, has other strategies that could be helpful as well. But for me, some of this worked. Quantify the size of tech debt and prioritize when to work on tech debt. I know it sounds very simple. Trust me, let's dig into it. It's not that simple when we first started. So quantify the size of tech debt. What does that mean? Acute versus systemic. That's sort of how you have to think about it as. something pretty small changes, like small changes that you can do like within a day, right? For this was like going back to write the documentation. Or the other big thing was making sure nobody shipped anything out without first writing documentation, or without first using a standardized designed component rather than writing their own button. Even that, as simple as that, it doesn't require us to go replace all the buttons or all the form elements to follow the design specs. It just meant anything new going out is now using this new component, right? This new piece that already had documentation in it. It's a very small step for us as a team because it was already built out. We had the tests for it. It had the documentation. And now, just when they, instead of writing their own piece of that same component, they use the one that was already pre-built for them. Super small change in every developer's life, right? Pattern they can replicate. Systemic. This is the pain point. So for you, maybe something like starting to use TypeScript. For us, it is moving out of hooks into hooks. That's systemic. Or even like starting of the documentation process, right? As a company, we never had a process around any of that. We just did, what was there before? How can we replicate it? How can we do this quickly to ship out the next product? We didn't really think about, should we write a documentation for that? Should this be a hawk or not? Is hawk still in fashion, right? What's the pros and the cons? So now, for me at least, when I'm dealing with systemics, I think of them as epics rather than tickets. So if you're doing the whole sprint agile workflow, for me, systemic is epics, which has multiple sprints all into it. It's going to take me months to fix, but all the tickets, all the little sprints that needs to be done for that systemic problem is mapped out already, right? So if anyone asks me what the size of it looks like, I may not be able to give them a finite deadline of saying, we will be done by this sprint of this month. No. But I can say, we have 140 tickets left. Ways to prioritize tech debt. This is another part that really is I think it's a struggle we all do subconsciously when we're trying to verbalize our thoughts to the rest of the teams. And again, I thought like the way that that article like codified it really helped. So the first part is confidence. What is the likelihood that this will lead to a larger problem, right? Hawks to hooks, not a simple, easy peasy switch. It has other underlying problems that it may rise up, other bugs it may rise up. How can I build up the confidence for that? Hey, experimentation. We set up tests just so I could go experiment on something, ship it out, and see what it looks like. That boosts your confidence there. So that's a great way of doing that and trying to make those systemic problems increase in confidence, and then that helps you figure out where the priorities lie. Time. When will this become a problem? For us, hawks versus hook was not a problem up until this year, really, because we started hitting problems where we couldn't work as well with other libraries, right? Up until then, we were working really well. Everything was going great. So it wasn't worth it for us to invest a lot of time in trying to fix this systemic problem. But for now, it's starting to become a problem. So let's have that discussion. User impact. This is where the product guys will really love you if you can outline exactly how this affects the user experience. Hawks to hooks, does it affect user experience? Is it giving a performance boost? That was a really hard thing for me to write some bullshit around to explain how they should do this. But no, the big thing that really helped was exactly outlining how other libraries have already moved on. And if they wanted that kind of feature, we would either have to invest more time to build it ourselves or invest time to fix this now so we could integrate this a little later. With the bonus point being, when something else comes along later for product, it becomes easier, right? Sequencing. Does this block important milestones? For us, yes. It's stopping us from actually delivering something to a user efficiently. And that's how you have to like think about that in that sense of like, is this a pain right now, right? Like, is there something else that we have to do before the hawks to hooks transition? In fact, for us, before we even managed to do that transition or even start looking at that transition, the other thing we had to do was make sure our TypeScript had no more any's. I don't know if any of you have had to deal with the any problem, but we had a lot of those. So in addition to the clouding of what the hawks did with data, where you didn't know what prop was coming through, we also had any's everywhere, which made TypeScript quite useless. So the first order of matter became fixing the any's. So now we could talk about the hawks versus hooks and actually size that to be a lot less problematic, increase the confidence in that, right? And the last bit, accumulated debt. This is the overall amount of debt you already have. And by not fixing this, are you going into the red? Again, bringing this conversation back to the talk of money. You break your conversation into financial pain for your business guys, and they will understand you guaranteed. And that was the same thing here. For us, I very much outlined how we already had all this other debt. By not tackling this now, we won't be able to work on this other debt, which will slowly start increasing and charging us interest. And guess what? That means our overall code stability goes down. All these other categories of tech debt would start becoming in the red line as well, right? And that was very easy then to convince them, yes, 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 you should go work on this now. This is very important, right? Now the last thing is you all are doing amazing work. You've made it so far to be able to have this problem of tech debt. That means you're already successful. I know tech debt sounds painful and ugly and horrible, and it may just ruin your day, but don't. It's all perspective. This whole thing is perspective. It's about how you approach it and how you can look at your partners, your teammates, and express that. And usually, when I talk about tech debt, I'm fairly happy about talking about it because most of the time, those problems are something I know how to fix. I'm not squirreling about, feeling insecure about it anymore, you know? And most of the time, because I'm a bubbly person, they feel happy about the fact that I want to fix it for them. And that changes their attitude. And overall, that changes your company's attitude on how you approach tech debt. And hey, if you stop criticizing somebody and instead compliment them about how well they've done so far, they are more likely to and willing to give you the benefit of the doubt that you may be right. This is how you trick the mental, the brain part. Play to the ego, man. Play to the ego. It really works. Now, I'm going to end with this. The only problem we really have is that we think we're not supposed to have problems. The problems call us to a higher level, face solve, and solve them now part, I think is whatever. But that first sentence, I love that. Because we all get paid to fix problems. And if we no longer had problems, we'd be jobless. So another thing to be grateful about. So, questions? Oh, cool. I did a really good job. Oh, there we go. What's up?
It's more of like a conversation we had yesterday about keeping up with documentation. What does help you use to keep up with documentation?
Ooh, yes. So we use Storybook for the front end part of this. But the other thing, because we work async, is Guru. We use Guru everywhere for everything. So my role really with Story is like the front-end architect person. Yeah, software engineer, but mostly what I do is that front-end architecting, planning out what is the front-end doing to keep up to date, right? Like our master plan, and we use Guru. The best part about Guru is that every month, it forces you to validate that document. Is this document current? It'll send me an email or a Slack notification saying, is this current? That means every month, I got to go through that doc and double check, is this what we're planning on working for the next sprint? Is this what we're planning on working for the next month? Has something changed? And for us, yeah, changes do happen because realistically, as you work on legacy applications, some bug will pop up that will become priority. It's not going to be the plan you planned out in your quarterly goals. That's just not feasible. Something else will rearrange. And because this document is shared through the whole company, and they know that I check it every month and update it accordingly, anytime anyone has a question about what we're doing on the front end, that's where they go look. Anything else? Yes?
Videos to
yes.
very quick documentation. If you don't have time, you do have time for a 2-minute Loom video.
Yes.
Yes.
They're not as accessible as I like, but they do the trick for the team.
Agreed. We also use Loom. At least the product guys use a lot of those to send us stuff. In fact, after this talk, I have to go make a quick Loom video for the product guys to understand what I meant by something will say when you press a button. So, anything else? Yeah. Let's go back. All the way back. Oh, too far. There we go. Yeah, we'll leave it there. Anything else? Yeah, this is by Reforge. I think they do consulting and stuff. I haven't really read through a lot of their other articles, but LogRocket also has some articles on TechDebt that sporadically talk about pieces of what this article talks about. I just found this one to be the most comprehensive of them all. Yes?
I have my question. After you've done some work on TechDebt, how do you communicate to the people who might say, oh, we don't need to do that? How do you say, look what we fixed, and now this is like half a second faster? How do you, yeah.
So you got to do the legwork for that a little bit beforehand. I know us developers like to go in our little holes and not talk to people. Shit part of front end is everyone wants to talk to you. You better start learning to talk to people because everyone's got an opinion. Could that pixel be 2 sizes bigger? So one of the things I started out, at least with Healthy and some of the other places I've worked before, is I always go talk to all the other teams. Everybody knows my name, whether they want to or not, whether they like me or not. Because one, I talk about what I do to them, and when they have questions or they're in trouble or they're stuck on something, I willingly give my time to them, even if it is not anything related to front-end tech. So with customer support at the previous company, they were complaining about how customers would come with these problems and they didn't know what they were talking about. I helped them with LogRocket, just setting something like that up, or Full Story. I think at that point we had a deal with Full Story. And just like they didn't understand what that concept was, but I did because I was in the engineering side of it, help them walk them through it, show them what it looked like, change their world. And they were more likely to be my allies when I was talking to leadership, right? So it's the same thing. Go make friends in all the other departments so that when you go up and speak to them, they're willing to listen to you, 1. 2, once you do, or when you're starting to do your work on TechDebt, announce it to the world. Everybody knows what the front-end team is working on at Healthy. Because I make it a point that every month for our all hands, there is a slide about what front-end does specifically. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be big financial things or big pieces. I talk about just saying, hey, we're working on Storybook right now, this cool thing. Anyone's got questions, come see me, but here's a quick little demo video, right? I'll just like put something together that's very fun, interesting to look at, that even non-engineers understand the value of. That helped me sell it to the product people. That helped me sell that concept to the designers, who then went and sold it to other teams, right? So then I'm not the only one, because the pain point of me not doing it becomes other people's problems as well. So the last point, when we do finish something, and even if it's an incremental gain, I make a big deal out of it. So I'm very lucky in that the other person who predominantly works on this tech stuff lives like 2 blocks from me. So I go take her out for like drinks. She and I will have a good chat. She feels good about it. She goes talk to other juniors in other departments because, hey, guess what I've been training her to do is go talk to other people. Gives us goodwill everywhere. But then again, at all hands, we talk about that, right? We are very frank about the fact that I know we said we'd get this to you last month. We have these problems, and this is why we had it. And when I say problems, I try to make sure they understand it in words for them, not engineering words, right? So I'll talk about bookcases and how you have to organize them by alphabetized or the Dewey Decimal Code, and rearranging them as much more problematic than moving components around, right? So something in a way, like even metaphors, using those to help them understand that, because then they can picture it and they can see why you're excited about it, and that translates. Even across Zoom, if you're very bubbly and you have a lot of hand gestures, it really helps. But all of this is very much a communication problem, right? At the end of this, tech debt is part of your culture, and how you treat it is part of your company culture. And if you want to change that company culture, and it's a pain point for you, and you want them to see that, you have to be actively part of that culture. Anything else? Cool beans. I think we're on time, right? Looks like it. Oh, yeah. Guru. G-U-R-U. Guru. Yeah. And for the front-end side, we use Storybook. We don't use all of the Storybook testing functionality just because we're Ruby on Rails, which means we have RSpec that does a lot of feature tests. That's great. But we do use unit testing on the front end, and we tie Storybook to that. And we use their chromatic tool for some of that beautiful snapshotting. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.